Conversations for change. Because the world is ready. So I am thrilled to have my dear friend Colin with me today, who is an evidence-based medium and energy healer. And Colin, I am excited for you to talk to us today about how that process came into being and sort of the evolution of discovering that you have mediumship abilities to the place where you are now, where clearly you are an evolving and expanding medium, which I mean, I just know from the many people who've worked with you how incredible that is. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
Sure, sure. So, and thank you so much, Becky, for having me on the Conversations for Change podcast. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to be here. And also great to just get to spend some good time with friends, right? Becky and I have
Yeah.
been friends for a while now. So this is so wonderful to be here. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm thrilled to have you.
So yeah, so for me, I'll give a little bit of a longer story and go into my background a little bit. So mediumship started for me back when I was a child. And when I was a kid, my mom's two sisters, so my two aunts, both were able to tap into people from the other side. And so my one aunt would see things. So she tells a beautiful story about seeing a little girl in a field when she was driving through, on a road. And she said, Mommy, look at the little girl playing in the field. And my grandmother was like, honey, there's no one there. And so and then I have another aunt who would walk into rooms and could feel or get flashbacks of what had happened in that room from years ago. She would just kind of feel an imprint. And so I grew up with knowing this and hearing these stories and working, being with my aunts. And they told me that I had the gift, like my mom and my grandmother as well. Like they said, like, oh yeah, he feels the energy, he can feel it. And so I used to have little visuals or inklings in my mind's eye that I'm like, oh, it feels like somebody's here, but there's no one here. And my intuition was
Hmm.
pretty strong as a child and into my teenage years. And how that came about was not through mediumship, but through giving advice to friends. It felt like whenever I was giving advice, something kind of would take over halfway through, and they were starting to get answers that they really needed to hear. That I was like, wow, that sounded really good. Like, or that really nailed it. Even though I was like, well, I wasn't totally thinking that. It just kind of came to me. So at that time as a teenager, I wasn't really on a spiritual path. I was barely just trying to, go to school, make good grades, try to be involved in after school activities. So this was just something I did, and without much consciousness to it. And then when I went to college, I went to school in New York City, and I grew up in a very small town in Pennsylvania. And so when I went to New York City, all of my intuition kind of just shut down. Like I was like, okay, now I'm in the big leagues. I got to go to college. I'm in the Big Apple. Like I have to, really put my nose to the grind and figure out how to live in this huge city. When I came from a town of like 1,400 people, we had more cows than we had people. So that was a big
Wow.
transition. Yeah.
Uh, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm just fascinated that your intuition actually shut down as you went into the city. I would think it would be uh,
Yeah.
needing to protect you from all of that new information, but I guess it was just so much. It just said, okay, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I felt like it was
Interesting.
either, yeah, me thinking, oh, I need to be an adult now. It's time to go into the real world or what it was. But yeah, my intuition kind of took a back seat. And I just started living my life. And then fast forward 15 to 20 years later, and I just started kind of having my spiritual awakening. And how that came about for me was I was on Instagram, I was scrolling one day, as we do, even though we shouldn't. I came across an Instagram account where it was a mother-daughter mediumship team. And the daughter's holding the camera and says, "Mom, do you have a dead person story for us today?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I do." So I was in a meeting with a client and the dad had passed over. And then, the mom goes into the story. And I was like, wow, I'm really intrigued by that. That's really cool. Like, I just started following them, watching their other videos. And then shortly after that, I got on YouTube to watch something. And at this time in my life, I was not really a big user of YouTube. But I had heard like, oh, a lot of content's on YouTube. YouTube's kind of changed. It's no longer just silly videos, but people actually create their own shows. And, there might be something there. So I was like, all right, I'll give that a shot. And what seemed to come up in my recommended videos was NDEs, so near-death experiences and accounts of those experiences. And I was really intrigued by that. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. And so I started watching those. And now, in hindsight, looking back, I realized that I think that was spirit kind of introducing me to spirit, like this is what it's like on the other side and how loving it is. And love makes up, the universal energy. That's like the number one energy of the universe that permeates all others. And so, yeah, now I realize that spirit was kind of preparing me, for my awakening. And
Mhm.
from there, I started listening to people who were in the consciousness community. So, people who trans channel, people who would bring in loving messages from the other side. And that really just started waking me up. I started to realize that consciousness isn't just a thing we strive for, but it is actual a thought process. It's a community, it's a way of thinking. And there are many terms and definitions in the consciousness community that overlap, meaning that somebody might be a medium, another person might be a trans channel, a third person might, tap into the Akashic records. But we all use similar language like the heart space or, the higher self. There's all of these phrases. So I started learning all about consciousness in general. And that led me to a healing course. So I was like, I want to heal myself. I want to see what's, in the shadows here and what can I bring up to the surface. So I started a healing course. And in that course, I was given a dream interpreter. And that dream interpreter ended up becoming one of my best professors. And so I started taking courses after the healing modality course. I started taking courses with this dream interpreter who is way more than just that. And that's Janice of Gentle Healing Dreams. And we love Janice. She's amazing. And so I started taking some of her courses and practicing gifts, going into meditation, learning how to go into the higher realms. And it was through those experiences that I learned that I was a medium. And so
Mhm.
so now to get to now to really answer the question. So um in the beginning, I felt like I was getting drips and drabs, or I was just getting little threads. And I didn't really know what my gifts were. I didn't know if I had clairaudience or clairvoyancy or claircognizance. Like I didn't know. And so I was just going up into the higher realms and sitting there and just seeing what came through. And and it felt like I was getting little nudges, or I'd get little snippets, and I felt like I was grasping for them. And then I would ask the person like, "Oh, did your mom have, blonde hair?" Or, and they would say yes or no. And I luckily was working with a community where it was all about practice. So there was no expectations of being right or wrong. It was just all about curiosity and having trust and just trying. And so through that process, I learned that I could get drips and drabs, but I needed to deepen and strengthen my practice. And so I got some confidence working with those people because I would get some validations. But I was like, well,
Mhm.
my type of personality, I like to, I'm organized. I like to, be able to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so I, from there, went into Suzanne Giesman's evidential medium course. And that really helped me to realize what my gifts were, how spirit talks to me specifically. So, what I've learned is that I see mostly, or I receive messages mostly through clairvoyancy and claircognizance. And so, how that looks like is I go into a session and I go up into the higher realms, and then I will start to see visuals. And I know that they're not mine because they literally pop into my head. I'm like, I didn't think about that at all. But all of a sudden, I'm now seeing a tree in front of me, and there's a girl swinging in the tree. I didn't make that. Like that. Wow, that's so far from where my brain would have gone if I was trying. So it was those kind of messages where I'm like, I didn't create that in my mind's eye. So where is this?
Mhm.
And so I took that and then also clear cognizance, where I would just get an all-knowing, like, we're going to be talking to the ant today. I'm like, okay, I'm getting like an ant energy coming through, and they're like, yeah, that's one of the people I wanted to connect with. And I loved my aunt. She was, so I'd get a validation there. Um, and so, yeah, I have now discovered that I do have clairvoyancy, I have claircognizance, and I'm just starting, and I say this literally, you're breaking news, you're the first to know. You heard it here first, folks. I'm starting to get a little bit, I don't know what the word is in the clairs, but I'm starting to smell, just get a little whiff of something that I'm like, it smells like delicious French bread in here, and I'm in my office. There's no bread in sight.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, that's amazing. So
yeah,
that's an interesting one, olfactory, because for me, that's one of the ones that comes through for me, and not very often, but when it does, wow, it's powerful.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you get visuals. That's so helpful.
Yeah, it's super, super helpful. And I, through Suzanne Giesman's course, was able to kind of decipher what the visual means. So she has a practice of like, don't take the visual at face value. Like there might be a deeper meaning to the visual you're seeing. Let's say I see a horse, and I'm like, rather than just jumping right onto that visual and be like, oh, your aunt loved horses. It's like sit with that visual and see how it makes you feel and what cognizance is coming in. Um, to know that like when I sit with it, I'm like I'll ask spirit or I'll ask the past loved one quietly. Like I don't say it out loud, but I'll ask them like, okay, you're showing me a horse. Why does that matter? What is important about that? And sometimes it's that they're like, I hate horses. I fell off a horse. I hate horses. I had a trauma of horses. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, okay, your aunt is telling me that she had a trauma when she was kind of a teenage girl with a horse. She fell off a horse and she never looked at horses again. Like she just left. And then that becomes the validation where the person's like, yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. She actually hit her head really bad and she was in bed for 3 months or whatever it was. So I've learned how to work with the visuals of don't take it just for face value, but then also to ask spirit, why is this important? Like how is this a validation? And in evidential mediumship, and what I really love about the type of mediumship that I'm practicing and learning is that it's evidence based. And so a lot of my sessions begin with just evidence validations. And so I start with oh, I'm connecting with your mom. She's showing me this is what she looked like. She said that she loves gaudy jewelry, and so I try to give a lot of these statements that I would not know to the client that I'm working with, and I try to go for like 70% accuracy, ideally 70 to 80%, where I have the client just sit there and kind of tell me yes or no. Don't tell me too much detail. I just want to hear yes, like if it's right or if it's not, just let me know it's not, because that could be somebody else or it could be me kind of getting in the way. And so from there, after I can't say that I determine how many validations occur, but after a while, it just starts to feel like, okay, we've got the person. I'm in a flow with the client. Like they feel like they're connected, and that's when things start to shift, and I start to receive messages from past loved ones, and those usually come in more as clear cognizance. It kind of goes back to those days when I was a teenager and I was giving my friends advice, and it just kind of
Mhm.
flowed out of me. And so those messages start to come through after the client, and I feel like, okay, we've got your loved one here, and here's what they want to say. So yeah, so that's my process.
That's really fascinating. And I love that it builds on this foundation of validation so that you know and the client knows who's there, what you're doing, and it's not this sort of I don't know. I sometimes think about the whole question of mediumship as being, um, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's kind of wishy-washy in the sense of you can have someone who comes in and says, "Oh, I've got this information for you and this message," and it's you can be wondering like, I don't get that this has anything to do with me. I think it's incredibly important to build this validation ahead of time because otherwise it's really, we're all perfectly capable of having stories come into our heads from anywhere.
Hmm.
So I really love that you have this process that really connects you to the person and to what you're and that you're not just out there saying, okay, let me just find out something whatever for this person. You're really looking for something that's going to help them in their process.
Yes, yes. And that is kind of my main mission. When I learned that I was a medium and that I could do this work, I was told by another instructor that I didn't even need to go up into the higher realms in order to do this work, that I could sit here on the earth plane and connect to spirit that is just here on right on the other side. And they told me that I had to be careful because going to on the earth plane and connecting right here on the other side, I could receive entities that are not necessarily in the highest light and love. And so hearing that, I made a what I would call a contract with the universe. And I said, all right, if I'm going to be doing this work, I want to do it to help people on their healing journeys. So I want to bring in information of love, healing, insights, and overall loving messages from people's loved ones to help those who are here on earth heal. And so that
Mhm.
and I also was like, okay, when I go into mediumship, I want to actually I go into, what we would call, I guess, like what we as in this group call light conduit. We go into conduit, get into the zone, and I go up into the higher realms, and then I connect with loved ones who are up at that level in order to bring in those loving messages of insights and closure. And so, yeah, that's been my kind of my mission statement when I began that work.
So, in other words, you decided not to stay down here on the earth plane and connect to any old that
Yeah,
came along. You actually
exactly.
do go up into the higher realms first.
Yeah, yep, that's
Interesting.
part of the
That's
process.
good to know. Yeah.
Up high. And I do, and there are times where I do feel energies, like even in my house, where I'm like, oh, I feel like there's something in here. And so I'll use my gift in order to, clear an energy. And nothing fancy there, just smudging, and sending good, loving energy out there. Like, so I just treat it more like that. So I know that something's going on the earth plane, but yeah, I at this time have no interest in connecting with that entity or energy and being like, so tell me about your life here,
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably very wise. I wouldn't do that either. Yeah. Um, and keeping your space clear too,
Yeah.
because I mean, I'm imagining that, having this gift, you're attractive to those who are looking for someone to talk to.
Yeah,
Um,
and I have struggled with that both in physical world and in the higher realm world, where and I was told by an instructor that I have an angel, what she called an angel bouncer. She's like, you actually have like an angel kind of surrounding you, and they're kind of like protecting you, and they're not letting energies come into your awareness or into your field. And so when I connect, I actually ask my bouncer, okay, you can let in, let's say you can let in Becky's loved ones now, like I'm ready to receive them. And I feel as I've done this work longer and longer, that the bouncer kind of knows when I'm like, okay, he's getting into conduit, he's grounding, he's doing his process to connect to loved ones. So let me go ahead and open the gate. And so yeah, yeah, that was an interesting piece of information I received about having some type of angelic protection around me to help me in this work.
yeah, and probably very helpful and useful to know too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
It definitely creates a lot of solace for me. There's some people who are on their awakening journey or in their spiritual path, and there's fear about like, dark or gray and energies that are here to kind of, latch on to us in some way, shape, or form. And it gives me great comfort knowing that I do have this protector. And so I'll call them in. I also call in my higher self and Archangel Michael or Archangel Raphael. Like I'll call in different angelic beings or higher realm beings to help me with my own clearing. I think spiritual hygiene is such a valuable practice and it can really help. And so I like to do that at least once a day, get a nice clearing for myself. And sometimes even after a session, if I'm even just tired, I'll do a clearing of any energies that are no longer mine, and I that was just part of the transmission. I've
Mhm.
had sometimes messages come through where a one story, a father was extremely sad. The With his son, I was connecting with the son, and the dad came through and had so much grief. Long story short, the father and son went on a hunting trip, and the son was young. I want to say he was like 9 to 12, like he was preteen. And sadly, the son accidentally shot his father during the hunting trip. Yeah, the father passed away right there. And so the son is carrying this immense burden of seeing that and having to witness that happen. And so when the father came through, he was just had so much grief that the son saw what he saw and that this had happened. And so I had to clear that grief afterwards. Like it stuck with me. And so there's an example of where sometimes spiritual hygiene isn't just necessarily for the gray or the dark, but also just to clear energies that were part of the transmission that are not mine to carry on or to hold.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, the fact is you're connecting with the non-physical realm in a world that has had a great deal of density.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're in an environment or a reality where there isn't trouble and hardship and pain and suffering. So you're opening, you just by virtue of the fact that you are exploring out into that, it comes in contact, or you
Mhm.
come in contact with it. So it makes sense that you have to have some processes to clear and to keep yourself from falling into the emotions that can hold you very tightly, especially something so dramatic as that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the question about spiritual hygiene, or when I feel energies after a session, or even just sometimes I wake up and I feel an energy. I ask myself, like, is this mine to carry? And that is the same kind of question I ask when I'm in a mediumship session, and I'm like, okay, did I just think that thought, or did that thought come to me? So there's a lot of discernment in asking myself, is this mine or something else? Whether I'm in a session or I'm outside of a session. That's kind of a common question I'm asking myself. And sometimes it's yes, that fear is yours, but then remember that it's not your identity. You're just sitting with fear right now. I'm like, okay, like so I can sit with the fear, I can work with the fear. So yeah, that's a common question I ask myself in order to know if something is mine or if it's something else, and go from there, base it on that.
Right. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And I'm assuming that a lot of the work that you've done has not been so difficult, but has actually been joyful for
Yes.
people. Or is a lot of it built around remorse and regret?
It's a lot of it is built on, I would say, healing. Healing is the word that comes to mind. And so it's sometimes I guess most conversations have a hard moment, like so it's sometimes it's loving and laughter. It's kind of what I'm thinking right now is it's kind of like a drama, like a movie that's a drama genre, where you're gonna laugh, you're gonna cry,
Yeah.
you're gonna you're gonna have some good moments and some bad. And so I had a session with a woman, and we were connecting with her dad. And at the beginning of the session, during validations, he was showing me his belly. He had kind of a big belly, and he was pretending to be pregnant. He was like showing me visuals of him rubbing his belly and holding underneath his belly and like walking around. And so I explained this to her, and she's like, "That's exactly what he used to do. He had a big pot belly, and he used to be like, look at I'm carrying, look at I'm due in May, you know." And so that was such a lovely, funny validation. So we all got a good laugh out of that, and the dad was laughing on the other side. And but then later on in that same session, the dad was saying that. This daughter, he had multiple children, and this daughter, he said, he was closest to her, and he could say that now, and that it meant the world to him that she stepped up when he was getting ready to pass. She was the main rock in his life during in his final moments before death, like those 2 or 3 months before he passed. And but she couldn't make it to the funeral or something there, and so he wanted to say that it was those 2 to 3 months that mattered way more to him than her being at the ceremony. And so
Mhm.
and she said, for 7 years I've been holding on to this guilt that I wasn't there, and I felt like I had failed my father. And I was like, no, it's quite the opposite. He's saying you're kind of the favorite, like he really, really loved you, and it really meant the most to him that you were there to help him through his transition rather than showing up to the funeral. And so yeah, she said that literally had released that guilt for 7 years for her, and so a lot of tears in that moment. So yeah, sessions.
Mhm.
So that was that healing moment, so it's sometimes it's the most dramatic, I would say, was when that unfortunate situation happened with the dad and the son in the hunting accident. That was the most intense to date. But other times it's more about spirit knows, or our loved ones know what kind of guilt, shame, fear, anger we carry. They can tell. And so a lot of the messages I receive are kind of going to those pain points within us. And I don't know where they're going to come from. So I sometimes I say something that sounds kind of nonchalant, or like, it really meant a lot to him that you were there during his transition. And then they just burst into tears, and it's like, oh wow, I hit something here that I didn't know. And that's how I know, okay, the healing work is happening. Like that's my mission. Like that's what it's all about. And I naturally feel like have kind of a healing energy. Like I can hold space for people, and so sometimes after they're crying, like we might just pause mediumship for a second and just take a couple of moments to just witness that grief leaving, or to just be a soundboard for them in that moment, and to let them process that before we go back into the mediumship session. So yeah, I'd say healing. It's a good sessions are usually a little bit of everything, but healing is the main priority.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think it's so powerful because, at least in my own experience, it's that healing that cannot happen, or that has it's one thing to heal something between yourself and another person who's still here. And if you manage to avoid getting that done, or connecting to them and doing that work while they're here, then it's kind of on you. You've got the opportunity. They're here. But once they're gone, I think a lot of times we feel like we're in this, it's like an unrequited love thing. We can't,
Mhm.
you know, I'm just thinking of my own life. And in fact, yeah, it's very clear to me. One of the most difficult things that I went through was that one of the people in my world as a young person committed suicide. And there was, I wrote a lot of songs about that because I grew up as a singer songwriter. That's what I used to do. And it took me years to get over it.
Yeah.
And a big piece of it was that I didn't feel like there was any way. And I can remember writing about that in the songs.
Yeah.
Um, that I can't reach you. I can't talk to you. There's no way for me to know if you can hear me, right? That kind of thing.
Right. It's that lack of closure that can really keep those wounds open for years.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, that's where I feel so grateful and so blessed to be able to help kind of bridge that gap in these sessions of bringing in that closure of, whatever they're feeling or how they're hurting. And sometimes even that's the validation, like that I'm saying something from spirit coming through, and it's exactly what that person's needed to hear. And I didn't know that. And so, um,
right,
it,
right. I get it.
yeah, for me, I think some people see mediumship as a kind of a novelty or a fun thing. Like, ooh, we went to a psychic. It was great.
I
And
was just going to say like a parlor trick, right? Like a
right.
parlor trick. Like, oh, yeah, I went to a medium. Now, I think it's way different than that.
Yeah, for me it is. Yeah, for me it's I think if I ever had my own practice, like I practice and most of my sessions are online, but if I ever had my own office, it would feel probably more like a therapy room, with table and tissues and some water and
Lots of cushion.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Because really healing is what it's all about, And so I feel like I've done a good job when somebody leaves feeling a little lighter. Like that's the goal, rather than I'm kind of past the point of proving that I can do it. Like I have proven it to myself. I've seen it firsthand. It's like, nope, I know how to do it. And I think the parlor trick would be me trying to still prove myself to others. Like, yeah, see, I knew that was your mom, and then thumbs up, and then okay, who wants to go get a cocktail? So
Yeah, right.
yeah, yeah.
Not quite the same thing.
Mhm, mhm.
So, so the mediumship has also led you down a path to doing energy healing. And I've noticed lately, um, in some of the work we've been doing that I see that sort of emerging from your work. Like I see you go into this realm of where you're moving energy and you're doing healing work. Can you talk a little bit about how that's coming about and what that is?
Sure, sure. And so this is kind of a newer gift that's just coming online for me, or I should say I'm becoming conscious of it. So similar to how I was, as a teenager giving great advice to friends that I didn't necessarily like totally understand, with energy work, I've always been, and this is going to sound silly, but I've always been good at massages, giving people massages and kind of knowing right where the pain points are, and that's all I thought it was. I was like, yeah, I'm just kind of a natural, massage. So great, so like my partner or my friends or, just yeah. And
So that's very funny to me, actually, because yeah, it's that's no coincidence. You actually know your hands actually know where to go
right.
on the body, and I've had that same. And I do a lot of energy healing work, so that's one of the reasons I'm interested in hearing about it from you. And that has certainly been true for me my whole life.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just know where to touch somebody.
yeah. Yeah. I
It's
am.
terrible because you get extended family people all want, as soon as you show up there, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. This kink has been
yes.
bothering me for days. And I'm like, all right, can I take my shoes off first? You know? Yeah, so that's how it started. And I just recently we were doing some sessions, group sessions where we were healing different people or they were asking for healing. And I started using my intuition. So we're digital, we're online. And I just started tapping into that person's body with free will choice. They said they wanted the healing, and so tapping into their body and just scanning it, and I would just start to feel the pain, or I would just kind of my mind would tell me go down to the lower back on the left hand side, and it's kind of near the sciatic nerve. I'm like, okay, 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 just trust, and then and sometimes I also feel it in my own body where it's like if I'm working on somebody in massage and now and doing energy work, like as I'm working the knot, let's say, out of somebody's shoulder, I'm feeling the release in my shoulder. It's really weird. where it's like I know that the energy is displacing or moving out because my shoulder is starting to feel better. But it didn't feel bad at the beginning, but it feels like a weight's lifted off of my own shoulder. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that was a problem of mine. And I realize now it's not. It's just a sentience, it's clear sentience to just know that that it's moving. So that was physically. So then digitally, I would scan the person's body and see where the pain was or where the injury was, and then I would ask the person like, "So I'm getting this, that, and the other thing from from your lower back," and they're like, "Yeah, that's that. Yes, that's exactly where it hurts." And so, kind of using the same gifts as mediumship of going through some validations first, and then I use my hands to start clearing energy out digitally. So like even now, like I start doing this, like I it first starts with pulling the energy out, and me personally, I kind of use my left hand as more of the energy to pull out. And so that's the primary force there to pull energies out of the body. And then my right hand is to infuse positive energy in, to infuse light or healing or warmth or whatever's needed. And so, yeah, sometimes it feels really heavy when I start pulling energy out. I actually feel like my bicep, like flexing as I'm pulling it out. It doesn't always just come out smoothly. And so I've just learned to kind of start trusting that, like, okay, if it's really heavy, just go slow and just pretend like you're really pulling a heavy stone along a rope. And I start to release that energy and send it down to Mother Earth, to a nearby tree, just somewhere for Mother Earth or to Gaia to transmute. Sometimes I'll bring in Archangel Raphael, and I'll picture like a bucket and ask the angels to help clear anything that's in the bucket. So yeah, so that's kind of a newer thing for me, this energy work. But I've gotten some validations from folks that, I nailed where the pain was, and then they felt better afterwards. So yeah, that for me, that's a new one. That's a new journey that I'm on that I'm excited about. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I think it's very exciting because I've certainly seen a couple of times when you've done that where um, we've heard back right away from the person. Even a remote healing we did at one point where um, the the person was in a hospital and we didn't really even know the extent of what had happened, and the information we got back after we sent our message about what healing we had done was absolutely, I mean, you pinpointed it exactly. And I was just like, wow, check that out. I mean, it was just perfect. So, and it makes sense that it's tied to the mediumship, that you're doing it in the same way, like that you have the visual with mediumship, and then you have this ability to pinpoint the the location of the pain or the problem for somebody physically in a similar manner. Um, I'm not saying this well, but you know what I mean, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It is a lot of the same skill sets of even like claircognizance or clairvoyancy coming in. Like if I'm scanning the person's body, I might see red down, in the lower back. And so that makes me kind of zoom into that point. And sometimes that's where the claircognizance comes in to say, yeah, it's the sciatic nerve. That's the pain. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, yeah. And I really have to trust it because like I'm scanning the whole body, right? So there is tons of room for error. I could choose any place on the body, since we don't know where the pain is and when we're doing these healings. And so that's what comes through, and I just trust that. And then when it gets validated, I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust it. So it's kind of that same trust, whether it's mediumship or physical energy work, um, that's it's that trust that really bridges both worlds. And I also learned through that dream interpreter. So way back when I was doing that first healing course and had a dream interpreter, I gave her a dream where I was being electrocuted. And there's a whole story. There's more details, but long story short, she said, "Oh, what you're describing is telling me that you were an energy healer in a past life and that you worked with energy and that you were murdered for it. And I was like, that resonates. I was like, just something
Yeah.
resonated with that. And so, yeah, with the energy work, it kind of comes to me. I don't mean it to say it this way, but the English language is so limiting. But the energy work feels intuitive, like where I kind of I just have this ability, and it just kind of comes naturally. And I also, I'm not in the medical field. I work in marketing as my day job, my corporate job, and I just feel like I just know what to do in medical situations. Like something just kind of comes over me, and I just know what needs to happen in order to get that person is stable, better into an ambulance, whatever it is.
So
And
you mean now you're talking about in real life?
in real life, yeah, yeah. So in real life, like when there's an injury, somebody cuts a finger in the kitchen or something, I just kind of know what to do. And I feel like that is somehow tied to my energy work. So stay tuned. I don't know what the connection is yet, so I'll keep you posted. But
Interesting.
my inkling, my intuition says that there's something connected there. Maybe I was a homeopathic doctor in a past life and did energy work, but also helped, heal colds. I don't know. But something tells me that they're somehow connected from past.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So are you now on the path that you're going to go into your mediumship as sort of the main thing that you do in life, or are you still just stepping into this as a
Yeah.
focus of your life? Where are you at with that?
Great question. And I'm really at a crossroads at this current time, where I would love for mediumship to be the full-time, job, because I do love the work. But at the same time, I have a mortgage, and so I'm currently in truly at a crossroads. I unfortunately was laid off in the end of 2025. And so this has given me an opportunity to strengthen my mediumship gifts. I have more time to work on those things. But at the same time, I do love marketing. Like I do love that work, and I love the type of marketing I do. I'm a marketing strategist, and I work with a lot of other marketing teams. So I like cross connecting people and collaborating with people. So yeah, the short answer is I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. I definitely think that this is not necessarily an unfortunate layoff, because I feel like it's opened up the opportunity for you to kind of expand
Yeah.
what you're doing and how you do everything and look at your life a little bit differently. Uh,
Yes.
and
Yes.
certainly, I think you've gotten, the chance to explore this mediumship enough to really get yourself to the place where this is what you can do. And for those of us who are around you, we know because we all want you to do it for us all the time.
And I enjoy doing it. I enjoy doing it for you guys. Yeah, it's such a pleasure. And yeah, the Lake Conduit community is just so wonderful. We have so many talented people with so many different kinds of gifts. And so it's so great to, do practice sessions with each other. So sometimes I'm doing mediumship for somebody, and then they turn right around and do a healing on me for my aura or for my energy body. And so yeah, it's so beautiful to be in the community.
Yeah, no, there's no question. It's a great place to hang out. So this is really interesting to me. And do you have a particular um, focus in the healing that you're interested in doing in this work? Or, like, for example, I mean, if somebody's wanting to have a mediumship session with you, are there certain things that you're not interested in doing mediumship for, or are you just
Mhm.
wide open?
I am not, yeah, the first thing that's coming to mind is helping people cross over to the other side. I don't have enough knowledge of that. And so I've done it once or twice, where they say like, hey, this earthbound soul hasn't crossed over. We want to help them cross over. Could you help out with that? And so I'm hesitant there. Like usually
Yeah.
my mission so far has been to bring in messages of healing, light, love, and inspiration and or insight and for closure. But actually kind of working with a soul to say like, hey, it's time to move on. That part I'm hesitant about. So that's one thing that I would kind of I would want to review with the client first before if that's what they were looking to do. Um, I also one time had a energy come through where it was a part of somebody's body that they had like an extra um not an organ but like a cyst or something. They were born with it. It was just a part of them. And so I was asked if I could tap into that and see what it was, if it was a separate energy, what just, so that they could kind of figure this out. And when I did that, the spirit teams kind of were like, nope, they're not supposed to know, and you're not supposed to know either. And so I was like, okay, this doesn't really feel like mediumship. This feels like something else. So I think you need a different person. So there have been a couple of cases where the mediumship wasn't tied to like healing and insight for somebody's personal growth journey. And so, yeah, I've kind of let those other things kind of fall to the side, or I haven't been tapping into those kind of things.
Right, right. Well, and it makes sense. And based on what you said in the beginning about what your focus is, um, I mean, clearly that's what you want to be doing. You want to help people who are seeking resolution because of things that have happened with somebody who's crossed over, who they want to have closure with, as
Yeah.
you said. And
Yes.
I think that's such a powerful off thing to offer to the world, because there are a lot of people walking around who need closure, and who, I just think, I look at the world right now and I see that so much of the work that needs to be done is healing. We
Hmm.
are all on a path of healing, because if we don't do our own healing work, we can't progress. And
Exactly, exactly. Going kind of out of the modalities and into what I personally believe is happening on Earth. So everybody has different views on this. So this is just my personal view, my personal opinion, that Earth is going through her own ascension. So Earth is rising, and humans are kind of like the neurons of Earth. Again, my personal opinion or how I view it. And because she's ascending, we are also ascending. And in ascending, we can't keep these lower level vibrations and densities with us. And so things like remorse or guilt or sadness, deep sadness, from not getting closure from a past family member, those things can't really go to the next level as Earth rises, as Gaia rises. And so that's where I come in, like where I can help somebody with that closure so that they can release that density, and that helps them kind of keep on their ascension journey, on their, whether they know it or not, whether they believe in ascension or not. I'm like, well, at the very least, closure is good for everyone. Healing is good for everyone.
yeah,
But that's kind of the bigger driver, going back to this idea of learning when I said I was learning about the consciousness community and what consciousness is as a construct. That's where I felt called to like, how can I help? How am I'm supposed to help people during this process? Like I got a download one night, and I just knew that I was on earth at this time to help with this to help with this ascension. And I was like, all right, I don't know how I'm supposed to help, but I'm supposed to help. And so through mediumship, that's where I found like, oh, this is how I can help people release densities in their self and keep moving forward.
yeah. No, I totally get it. It's like when you know what you're supposed to be doing, then it's your job to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that makes perfect sense to me. And it also makes sense to me that this whole process is, everybody's in this process right now of feeling this coming on, because it is coming
Mhm.
on. From my perspective, when I look out into the world and I see sort of where we are, every system that's in place that's quote unquote running the world is a system that needs to change.
Yeah.
So clearly, there's a whole lot of change that has to happen for us to get to any place that's going to be where we want to be.
Mhm.
And whether you call it ascension or you call it a global transformation, I don't know about the words mattering nearly as much as the understanding that as human beings, we all have healing work that we need to do to take ourselves to the place of the world we want to see,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I think that's the main driver for me. I'm sure it's a driver for you because I see how you are in the world. And um,
Exactly.
yeah, we have the opportunity to be of service. And I was,
Exactly.
yeah, I was just thinking actually, as a way to kind of bring this to closure and to wrap it up, that I have um, this past weekend, I had a thought come to me. Um, I was in the middle of a couple of experiences that were just unfolding so magically and perfectly. And suddenly the phrase came into my mind, um, when we align to the highest and best for all, everything else takes care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think about the work that you're doing and how you figured out how to do it, and what, the process I've been watching you go through. And I feel as if that's really sort of where you've landed, right? You've come to this place where it's like your intention is to do what's the highest and best for all. And as you've been doing that, things are working out. And
Yeah, true. Yes, yes, truly. Just to underscore it, you're so right. Like I really love the work. Like the healing work is really what really I for years I thought I was gonna like when I was a child or a teenager, I thought I was gonna be a therapist or a psychologist. I wanted to go into some type of healing work. One time I was laid off from a job and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna be a nurse. I'm gonna totally switch gears. So yeah, I'm done. I'm done with marketing. Um, and so I've always known that for in some way, shape, or form, I'm supposed to help heal other people. Like I'm supposed to help people in some way. And so yeah, it's been so beautiful to be able to do that through mediumship. Because I kind of step aside in order for messages to come through. Like Colin ego just needs to sit over on the sidelines. I don't know what's going to happen, and that kind of gives me a validation that it's like, okay, I am doing the work for the highest and best because like I'm not even in it. When I'm really just a vessel at this moment, helping the messages come through. Um, and in my own personal life, yeah, 2025 was really rough. My dad died. My partner and I, a long-term partnership, we decided to go our separate ways. I got laid off, and I moved out of New York City after 18 years. And so that was a lot of change, all within 6 months. But it's been my spiritual practice and doing this work that has really helped keep me grounded. And I've had so many beautiful synchronicities come up during this time, post loss of all of that. I've such beautiful synchronicities that have really helped keep me going. So yeah, I just wanted to underscore what you were saying, that I'm definitely feeling that in my own life for sure.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Oh.
Wow. Hmm. Well, it's fascinating to me. I mean, it's been such an interesting and wild kind of ride through the last couple of years. And certainly I feel really good about this year. I feel like we are, the energy's high. I've been feeling a lot of really great things coming, and I'm seeing a lot of great things coming in the people and the work around me. So I'm excited to see what comes next for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel the same way. It's, yeah, new year. It's a 1 year. It's the year of the horse. I was born, I am a horse. I was born in a horse year, so I'm pumped for that, for my own personal journey. And yeah, yeah, it feels like, 2025 was the shedding of a lot of different things. It truly was for me. And yeah, now it's made space to let the new come in. And that's huge. Like I think a lot of voids were created in 2025, and people sometimes give voids a negative connotation. But in this case, it's really the void is just now a vessel for the light to fill in. So that's the ultimate.
Oh, that's beautifully said. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And especially if we're opening up and asking our higher selves to come in and help us do the work.
I even have my higher self sometimes help me when I'm doing housework. Okay, guide my hands. What's next? Like I have this huge list of things from dishwasher to vacuum, and I just I even ask my higher self to come in those moments to be like, okay, help me get this done. And sometimes I just kind of leave it up to higher self. So I'm vacuuming, and then all of a sudden I shift gears, and like I just stop thinking about the logistics and kind of just let it flow. And so even in practical ways, higher self can come in and help.
That's great. And it's a good reminder that it's always there. I think we tend to think that if we haven't called on it, it's not there anymore, which it could not be further from the truth. Because if it's not here, we're not here.
Right, right, exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
we can ignore it and do crazy stuff. Don't get me wrong. But at which point, I suppose it's our higher selves are just sitting back and going,
They're on
that's
their
what
learning
that's about.
journey.
Okay.
Your higher self says they're on their learning journey. We'll let them learn. Thank goodness, another thing in the conscious community or consciousness kind of world, I've learned that, time is linear only here on Earth, right? That time is not linear on the other side. And so I think our higher selves can sit back and be like, all right, you take your time. I'll be here when you're ready. They're as ever patient. They're forever patient with us as we go through our learnings here on the Earth plane.
Hmm. Yeah, probably more patient than we are.
Yes, I personally think so, yeah. Oh,
Hmm. Well, thanks so much, Colin. And I really am pleased to learn so much about how this whole process has worked for you and to see um, how it expands what you're capable of being able to do to be of service is inspiring to me. Um, Makes me want to learn more myself about how that all fits together because it's always seemed to me like something way over there that I don't have any. um, I mean, I have intuition, don't get me wrong, I can have brilliant insights, but what you do is just seems to me to be so special and so spectacular, and it was lovely to hear how it all kind of came into being and the tools that you could use to build it into what it's become.
well, thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast and getting having the opportunity to, talk about my story and my gifts and yeah, how it's been working for me. It's always a pleasure to connect with you and always a pleasure to be here. So thank you. Thank you, Becky.
Okay, and thank you. Have a wonderful day, and I'm sure we'll talk very soon.
Sounds good. All right. Bye, everybody.